Hey folks, let's learn something new about the oil and gas industry. All right, by popular demand, we're bringing back Rhod Mackenzie. Hey Rhod.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very good. Rhod is a fascinating person. So Rhod is actually Rhod. Before I tell your story, why don't you tell your story? Talk about where you're from and where you are now, and what do you do?
Okay, I'm a Scotsman. I was educated in Scotland at Edinburgh University, but for the past 24 years I've been living in Russia. For the past 10 of them I've been living in a place called Ufa that most of you would struggle to find on the map. It's just at the bottom of the Ural Mountains, which is the dividing point between Europe and Asia in Russia. I run an oil and gas information excuse me, oil and gas information site called Info, where we cover everything from finding it to refining it.
Yeah, and so one of the things that's great is my audience, we're going to get to hear from behind the scenes what is really going on in Russia versus what we hear in the media. So, Rhod, let's talk a little bit about the oil and gas industry in Russia and in general. What's going on your end?
Well, it's been a difficult year all over the world for the oil and gas industry, but Russia has come out of it better than most. There's two reasons for that. One is the devaluation of the ruble against the dollar, and of course oil and gas and most commodities are denominated in dollars. The ruble has gone over the last 18 months from 31 ruble to the dollar to today's 69. So as you can imagine, you're selling in dollars, but your costs are in rubles. You've suddenly got a bit of a margin to play with.
Right.
So Russia's kept pumping oil out of the ground and pumping gas out of the ground, and it's kept up. In fact, it's going to increase its oil production this year by around 1.5% and gas by 4%.
Yeah, and so that's really cool. So I never thought about that because of the devaluation of the ruble, the cost internally in Russia has been cut dramatically.
Absolutely. Your fixed costs, even if you give a percentage pay rise, they're still denominated in rubles. So you're fine. And most Russian oil companies break-even point for investment return, etc., is around $30 a barrel. And for certain companies like Rosneft, which has got the biggest reserves, and my local oil company, Bashneft, is about $20. And its lift cost, as in operating lift cost, is between $4.5 and $6.
Right.
You add that to the fact that there's a very flexible tax regime here, which means that the higher the oil price, the higher you pay, the lower the price as a percentage you pay. So the government wins on the high prices and it gets a lot less to the budget. But your margins pretty much stay the same whether oil's $100 or it's $40.
Right. And let me back up a little bit. For people in my audience that don't understand, lift cost is actually the cost of you getting that oil out of the ground and moving it somewhere. You add that to your actual production cost, which is the cost of actually getting that oil. So Rhod, you have a couple of projects maybe you want to talk about that are highlighted?
Yeah. I mean, the major project that's going on at the moment, and that affects the whole of Europe, is the Nord Stream pipeline. It's been operating since 2011, and it goes directly from Russia through the Baltic Sea directly into Germany. Now, that is planned to do another two branches of it in parallel to that one, and that's mainly to bypass the Ukraine. Now, Russia's not doing that specifically, or Gazprom and its European partners like Wintershall, like Total. They're doing it because of the aging infrastructure of the Ukrainian gas transportation system. This was built in pre-Soviet times, well, in Soviet times, like in the 1970s and 80s. And there's been a complete lack of investment in that. So this aging infrastructure isn't going to last too long. And Gazprom and its partners are thinking, well, why don't we just do what we've currently got and pump it straight into Europe using a new pipeline? And of course, the EU is looking to diversify, but it's got nowhere to diversify to. Right. The UK's gas production has dropped dramatically, as has Norway's and Holland's. And they were the other main exporters of gas to Europe. Now, there is no other way that they can get it without huge expense. They're talking about the southern corridor from Azerbaijan, the possibilities of Iran, but given the relationship in the past between Europe, the US, and Iran, I don't see them as being a reliable supplier.
Right. So, what is your views on the future? You know, the U.S. is building a lot of LNG plants to export liquefied natural gas to the rest of the world, to other markets, including Europe. Do you think somewhere down the road in the future that will actually hurt Russia's market?
I don't actually see it because I think that the major push for LNG has been the Asian markets,
Right.
who are still growing and have a voracious appetite for LNG and are prepared to pay the price. Given the cost of LNG, its transportation and then distribution across Europe, makes it pretty much uncompetitive against pipeline gas direct from Russia.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, what other projects are going on in your neck of the woods?
There are mainly things like they're looking at how to sorry, wait for a sec, how to get on to the hard to develop deposits. That's the things like the Bazanov Suite, which has got huge reserves, but they're very similar to your share fields in the Midwest. They're now beginning to develop the technologies here as opposed to importing the technologies to be able to do that.
Yeah, and so those fields probably won't come online until the price of crude goes up a bit.
That's correct. I mean, at the mature fields, nothing's going to change dramatically. I mean, Alexander Novak, who's the Minister of Energy here, made a statement yesterday. He said, we're not looking to increase our production, but we're not looking to decrease it. And things are going to be relatively stable till 2019. That's when the mature fields will start to have plateaued and then start the downward slide in production. So there's a little bit of time before things dramatically change.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens moving forward because there's a lot of well stimulation technology that probably could help those mature fields. But because of the sanctions, I don't believe we're allowed to bring that technology in, but it exists.
That's correct, and it does. Unfortunately, you mentioned sanctions, and let's not get into the politics of them. There's a major import substitution program going on here with a lot of the technology institutes and universities, etc. And the Chinese are getting involved. They are looking to work with Russian institutes and develop the technology. They are several years behind. Obviously, the technology is being developed in the West, particularly in the US and all its experience. But like everything, the space race, etc., people catch up.
Yeah, of course, right? There is no secret sauce. It's just engineering and research. And of course, the Chinese and the Russians and anybody else on the planet that wants to spend that time can figure it out as well. So, but before we go a little bit further, I want to let the audience know if you're interested in any of these projects in Russia, Rhod has a complete database of not only all the projects, but timelines, deliverables, budgets, project managers, contact information. We'll put a link up, Rhod, to your website in the show notes. But if anybody's interested in these projects, they can go to your website and they can actually explore and see these projects in their entirety, correct?
That's correct. Also, finishing off a full, not just a database, but a full information set that will list every single deposit with its reserves, how long it's been in operation, how long it's intended to be in operation, who the operators are, and what its production figures are.
Yeah, so
that'll be ready by early February.
Yeah, so everything you need. And Rhod, real quick, what is your website name? Even though we'll put a link up.
It's www.rusmininfo.com. RUSMININFO.com.
Yeah, perfect. And folks, we'll put a link up into the show notes. So, you know, we have a bit of an alternative media company here. And you were just talking to me a minute ago about you have some friends that are actually doing the same thing. Let's talk about that a second.
Yeah, basically, it's a site called Russia Insider. And the mainstream media, the Telegraph in the UK, Le Monde in France, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they all tend to cover the same things in the same way.
Yep.
But in America, there's things like Zero Hedge, Counterpunch, and a large number of sites that are alternative media. And these guys are working with them and people like Stephen Cohen, etc., to produce an alternative view from the mainstream of what's really happening in the politics that affect Russia and the relationship between America and Europe and Russia. And the most interesting fact is both of them are American.
Yeah, that's just too funny. So there's two
So
Americans in Russia running this alternative media company.
that's correct. Charles has been in Russia for about 10 years, and he's a journalist, and he felt that the mainstream media was not reflecting what was really going on and wanted to do something about it. I'm obviously helping them. And one of the other guys behind it is a guy called Vladimir Rozyanko. Now, he sounds as Russian as you can think of caviar and vodka, but he's actually as American as apple pie. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio, the grandson of a Russian emigre who emigrated to America in 1952. He's been in Russia for only 2 years, and he is active part of it. And it's well worth a read. It has great English coverage of all sorts of things, from geopolitics to culture, and it's a great way of learning about Russia.
Yeah, and what is their website?
It's called Russia-Insider.
Yeah, and folks, we'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. So, Rod, one of the things that you and I also have in common is our taste for fine spirits, right? And you have a particular taste for single malt scotches, is that right?
I have a particular taste for good cognac and good malts. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, and you actually have a couple with you that you really.
I have one particular one, which is a Dalmore 18-year-old. It's a great drop, and it's actually from the Speyside Valley, which is where Glenlivet, Macallan, and some of the other more famous malt scotches come from. I particularly like this one because that is my clan badge from my family, the Mackenzies, which is the Silver Stag's Head.
How cool is that? And here's what makes me want to come and visit you. How much did you pay for that?
Well, during the devaluation of the ruble against the dollar, the supermarkets didn't actually increase their prices. So I went to the supermarket and bought up pretty much as I could at the old prices. So this time last year, it was 80 rubles to the dollar. So I was picking that up for $70.
$70 US. And if I went to go buy that right now, that is well over a $120 bottle.
Oh, it's $150.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost worth the plane ticket to come to Russia just to be able to buy spirits at that discounted price.
Unfortunately, you'll get caught at customs. They don't like you carrying more than 2 liters.
Damn. Okay. Well, it was worth a thought.
Not Russian customs, US and UK customs.
Okay, so the US. So coming back in the US, I'd get caught.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You would just have to enjoy the holiday of tasting.
Yeah. We're doing this via Skype because I've yet to get over there, but I will somewhere in the future. We're going to do this in person. I will get over there and we're going to record a session in person because I love the Russian people. I love the Russian food. I want to spend some time over there with you.
You are more than welcome, and certainly I'd love you to come in the summer. We'll visit St. Petersburg, and you can see the White Nights where it doesn't get dark. One of the world's most beautiful cities. Visit Moscow again. Lots of art, lots of culture, and lots of fun.
Yeah.
The other bottle I have is, most of your viewers will remember the Second World War and Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill getting together at Yalta and sorting everything out. Well, Churchill was a big fan of cognac, and while in Yalta, he discovered Russian cognac. And he enjoyed it so much, he actually got a container load shipped back to the UK. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, the distillery decided they wanted to capitalize on their link with Winston Churchill. And here we have it. Churchill cognac, as you can see. Picture of Churchill, picture of Big Ben, and a picture of Tower Bridge.
You know what? How cool a story. How much history is involved in that bottle. That is just really a cool story.
It's an amazing. I was very surprised when I discovered it. I actually discovered it in a supermarket. I'd never heard of it. And then once I purchased the bottle, I actually did the research on the whole story of how and why.
Yeah, so it's a Friday morning here in Houston, Texas, in the U.S. but it's actually Friday night where you are, which means you can enjoy that cognac right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you come, you can do the same.
Yeah. So, folks, we like this information from Rhod so much. We're trying to do this once a month. We may not always get it exactly 30 days apart, but we want to make this a regular show. So, Rhod, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure to have a chat and talk to people who are interested in what's really going on in the world of oil and gas and outside their own little territory.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this is just great stuff. So, folks, I hope this helped. We will see you next time.